All right. So today I have Yara Torre with us on the podcast, and she began in the hair industry as an assistant at the very young age of 17. And she spent 7 years learning and growing as a stylist, establishing herself in a local stylist and wedding based as a local stylist and wedding based beautician before opening up her own salon, Lashes and Curl Studio in Key Largo, Florida, in the summer of 2018. As Yara built her career, everything changed with a one given tragic accident in 2019. She actually fell 2 stories, broke her back, and left her paralyzed from the waist down. And after 5 months of rest and recovery, Yara not only made her way back into the salon, but she continued to build an impressive portfolio, becoming a balayage. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
Hopefully. Great. Balayage specialist and an educator with the Sunlights Balayage Artisan Team. And most recently, an ambassador and educator with DesignME Hair. Today, she continues to grow and inspire those around her. And I am incredibly honored and so excited to have you on the podcast, Yara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Karen. I am pumped about being here. I have known you for a while from the wedding industry, and you have encouraged me and supported me so much as an entrepreneur from the very beginning of my solo entrepreneur career. And I am so grateful to be here joining you and chatting about business life and everything in between.
All the things. For those of you who don't know our story, Yara has been a huge part of my journey, and I think vice versa too, probably. We were just running side by side together when we kind of started out in our solopreneur careers, and she even somehow was able to style all 15 of the people in my bridal party on my wedding day. And I continue to lean on her and her beauty team as my career moves forward. So I just love you so much for so many reasons.
Oh, I love you too. I love that memory too. Like, I guess from all the weddings that I've done throughout the years with you, doing your wedding was definitely one of the most memorable moments of my career. But I forgot that we really did wake up at the crack of dawn to get all those girls with all gorgeous long hair set up in the most beautiful, like retro styles, right? So, not just a huge bridal party, but also it was a very specific look that we were going for. And if I do say so myself, I think we nailed it. I love your
Oh,
wedding.
absolutely. I mean, to give you like a style that wasn't really traditional and then tell you that there was going to be, a good handful of us, it was fun and probably tiring.
Oh, it was amazing. I loved it. And I love being a guest at the wedding.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
remember forcing like a salad on you that day. I'm like, you must eat.
Back in the day when I still had like really toxic, unhealthy habits of like not taking care of myself or my body as I worked. But that has changed throughout the years, as business evolves and as we evolve. And as I develop, not only as a salon owner and a hairstylist and overcoming big life obstacles, I've also now dabbled into coaching and just like you. And I
Mhm.
think so important to really, rewire those like old habits, like not eating and like overextending yourself and like hustle culture. Um, and I love that we can live both a balanced life and still excel in all the areas of business that we want.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I just did a little like when I sent out my newsletter, I think it was last week. It was like, here's 5 things on how to make it through your wedding day without like killing yourself. Cause it's so true. We fall into those terrible habits.
Love that. What is that? A blog entry you made? Or
I have a newsletter, so
oh,
I'll throw
wonderful.
your email address onto it.
Please, that sounds incredible. I think everybody should read that.
Yeah. Well, so we'll go into our first question today. Interestingly enough, your roots go way further back than your actual bio. So you just leave an incredible life from day one, I think. Can you tell us about how you came into this country as a young Latina and your experience from that moment into becoming a successful entrepreneur?
Yes, Karen, that is such a fun story to tell that I don't get to tell too much. But I moved to the United States at the age of 13 or 14. I was born and raised in Costa Rica. And in the capital of Costa Rica by the mountains, and I lived a very different life than this. Essentially, I'm from the city. We did do the jungle and the beaches. Everybody always asks, like, oh, where were you from? And as a matter of fact, when I first moved here, I think I was in the 7th grade, my classmates would ask like ridiculous questions like, do you guys have grocery stores? And I'm like, yeah, yes, we do, and McDonald's and malls. Um, but it was a very different life in many ways. It was a big culture shock to come here at that like tender age of like being a teenager and already hating the world. And then my parents were like, and by the way, we're moving you across the country. You're going to speak a completely different language and you're not going to know anybody. And you are moving to the Florida Keys where it's even smaller than like, just moving anywhere else in the US. So that was challenging in itself. I didn't speak English, which is a surprise to a lot of people now. They go, what? Are you serious? Because language and communication, and I think that's why I've done so good in the service industry, is definitely one of my passions. I love chit-chatting. And I think now looking back at that big moment in my life where everything kind of was turned upside down, as much as I didn't like it, it was such a defining point. The culture shock of being immersed into a completely different place that I had never been to, with people that were different than the people that I was used to, the culture, the food, relating to people. And in that time, I had a choice, and I've had this choice time and time again, which is remain the same and like just kind of like wallow in your own pity and like hide from the world, or face it head on and do something about it and change. And at that age, I remember one time I came home and I had been crying every single day after I joined Key Largo school, literally every single day for 3 months. And one day I said, that's it. I feel like what's holding me back is the fact that I can't really make that many friends because I didn't speak the language. So I decided I would do something about it. And in that moment, I said, I will only listen to English music, watch English TV with subtitles on, and read English. Even though I didn't like fully understand it, I just put myself in the uncomfortable position to have to do something about it. And within 6 months, I was put out of ESOL class, which ESOL is like English speaking for students of other languages, I believe. They were like, you've learned enough. And one of the big things, if anybody's listening and still working and like learning a new language, I think that watching TV with subtitles on was a huge factor for me. It really
Oh,
worked
that's
with
interesting.
yeah, it really worked with the way that I learned, because it was like visual, but I could hear it. Um, and yeah, and that's what happened. And then I have been faced with that same decision of like sink or swim several times. Fast forward 2 years later, I was working at a doctor's office locally, and I was going to high school. But along with that like cultural shock that came along moving here, I also felt very disconnected with people my age, and I really wanted to start moving forward in life. Looking back now, maybe I wish I would have slowed down a little bit, because we're only young ones, right? And we're only children once. But I've always had this very driven, like entrepreneurial spirit of like, okay, what's it? Like, what's gonna happen next? And I wanted to do something with my life. I went into nursing, and at the age of 16, I convinced my parents to allow me to get my GED and to join FKCC. And I was working at a doctor's office, and that's when I very quickly realized that I absolutely hated it. Which then led me to quitting my job at the doctor's office, wanting to not be in school anymore, but still doing it because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But then I landed a job at a salon in Key Largo called Hair in the Tropics. And gosh, this must have been like 2008, 2009, maybe. And that's where my life changed forever. I met a couple other girls there that were going to beauty school, and I said, what? I can do that? And the rest is history.
It's funny, that was the same reaction I had when my best friend was saying that I should get a degree in event management, like as a party planner. And I was like, that's a thing, you can do that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like it's so interesting to hear like different people's stories because a lot of times it does come from resilience or comes from trial and error. And eventually you just kind of fall into what you're meant to do, even if you don't realize it.
Yeah, honestly, I think that life is a whole lot of yes and no choices that we make.
Yeah.
And whenever you feel that pull to do something that like lights you up, I think it's so important to like pay attention to our bodies and pay attention to how we feel when something's presented to us. And not only listen to ourselves whenever something doesn't sit right and we should walk away from it, which I wish I would have learned that like 20 years ago, but also really paying attention to the things that scream yes at you. And sometimes, even if they don't make sense to other people or make sense in a logical way, like following that calling.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe in that. Well, I know right now you're more focusing on the salon and mentoring. But what were some of the influential moments in your journey when you were more immersed in the wedding scene?
Oh my goodness. So when I started working at that salon at the young age of like 16, 17, my boss was a rock star. If some of your listeners are, local here from the Keys or from anywhere, really came across her. Her name is Shay, and she's wonderful. She was such a shaping human in my life. She did weddings, and she did a really good job at it. And she was very charismatic and very animated in the way that she presented herself in front of a bridal party, and all the brides would fall in love with her. And she was, of course, also very talented at what she did, and she believed in me. She saw something in me very early on, and she said, you could do whatever you want. You're going to be in stages, you're going to do great hair, you're going to have all the things. And I didn't see that then, but she pushed me out of my comfort zone. She allowed me to do hair. She would really play a character well, of like coming in and selling the entire bridal party that I was like ready to do the thing. So like once I was there, I was like there, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And she's like, she would just tell me like, you just grab the hair and you twist it and you place it where it feels good. And to be honest with you, it really is like that. It is one of the beautiful things about our career, that it is very creative, and a lot of it is open to creation. So discovering that bridal work really sparked something in me that made me fall in love with not just the doing of the updos, but also the experience as a whole, being part of somebody's very special day. And it was, I stayed in that salon for about 3 years. And towards the end, when I was starting to move away, I remember having my very own first like wedding that was my booking. And it was a client who was local. So I had been doing her haircut and color, and then she was going to get married. And she also is a very beautiful woman, stunning woman. And um they were having a pretty like, I would say like high end, especially back then. I mean, weddings are like nothing what they used to be like, but like back
That's
then
the truth.
it was like a big budget. It was like a real wedding. Like they had like set out, like they had booked a really beautiful venue, and there was like a real dress. Like it was a real wedding, and it was mine. Um, and I'll never forget, because there was a person in the bridal party who was a staff member when I was in high school. And when I quit high school in order to pursue nursing, which then led me into hair, I felt like I had let a lot of people down, especially like staff members,
Hmm.
um, counselors, teachers. I was always fairly smart at school, and I didn't get into much trouble. I was just really eager to get going with my life. But she was a guest in that wedding party. I believe she was the maid of honor, as a matter of fact. And I got to do her hair, and it was just such a full circle moment for me of being like, I didn't let anybody down. Like I followed my heart, and look at me now. Like the people that I felt like would maybe be disappointed of me, she was probably so proud. We didn't have that like full blown conversation, but it was definitely a moment where I was like, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. And sure enough, weddings, shortly after that, I quit that job and I moved on to the other salon, which I was at for 7 years, where I really would say that I established myself as a colorist. I really came up with making the bridal business a completely separate entity from the salon that I was working at. My new boss allowed me to make this sort of like a side hustle that I just did. She had no interest in doing bridal hair, and she said, "You do your thing." Um, so being able to have that experience as handling a wedding on my own, and then having the bravery, the courage that it took to creating something that was more mine, is quite literally what got me through my 20s as I built my book without social media and Instagram and none of those things. I was just a young kid. I had I had a baby at 21, and I had to pay bills. I had to pay big girl for the first time. And when I was only making $75, $100 behind a chair per week, weddings were literally where I could make a couple $100 really fast and feel really good about it. I'll always say that, like, if it wouldn't have been for weddings, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, I mean, that's when we had met. And I think we both were starting to feel like we needed something of our own.
Yeah.
So it made it even more fluid for us to run side by side and be like, we're going to do this. And we would just refer each other back and forth. And, and it was a lot of fun being in the wedding space. And you would hear things, I would be able to say, oh my gosh, Yara, they were saying that they loved XYZ and vice versa. And that was really where we started creating a culture around us, I think, with the other vendors too. And it was just a really, really fun time.
Yeah, it was quite magical. I'll never forget, like, the whole like story of like how the name of my salon now out, it was like you had just opened up your bridal business, and I there was like one other local girl that I knew that was around our age, and all of you girls would like talk about like LLCs and things like that, which were so intimidating to me, right? I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Not ready. And then one of our like vendor locations was like, you need insurance. And like, to have insurance, you need to be a business.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And Karen was like, it's okay. It's no big deal. Like, this is so easy, to the point where you like went way out of your way and helped me come up with a name, helped me build a website. Like, you did it all for me, basically. So I am always so grateful for that time in our lives.
I mean, it was, again, we were kind of running together and it was, even in all that creation, it was, I think a lot of times when I tell the story of the name of your business, I say, I don't take any credit for what Yara has done. It was all you. It was I mean, we were sitting around a table, I think in my backyard, just talking about what it could be. And we came up with lashes and curls. And it was like, oh, aha, that's it. That sounds great. Let's just run with it.
I still
Um,
always give you credit.
and I know, but all that hard work and everything that has gotten you to where you are now, that's all you. You've done an amazing, I mean, your journey is just incredible and so inspiring. And I'm just happy to have even been a little bit of a part of it. And so I'm going to fast forward to when the big thing happened in your life. And we had just gotten the phone call. You had a photo shoot that day. And I got a call that you weren't able to do the photo shoot. And if I knew anybody, because you had been in an accident and nobody had known the severity of what had happened. And I remember finding out, and I think it was the day after, my business partner and I had come to see you in the hospital. And even when you're laying in the bed, you're just fallen from 2 stories. You had no idea what was to come in your life. And I'm pretty sure you looked at me and said, it could have been so much worse. And I just like the you always had such a light and optimism and positivity, even in like, it was like the worst case scenario. And you're like, oh, it could be worse. I could not be here. And so we've talked a lot about how you've gone through big challenges through your career, through your life, even in your young life. Can you speak to the creative entrepreneurs who are listening in on how you've been able to stay resilient and rise above all these unexpected obstacles that life has put in your way?
Yeah, that was a trip down memory lane,
Yeah,
and
that was a moment to remember.
my injury, there's and there's a mix of things. First and foremost, I don't refer to it as an accident anymore because it was not indeed an accident, but an injury and a much more complex situation
Yes.
of, of abuse and of me denying myself and abandoning myself for a very long time. So now that I'm able to more openly talk about my injury and what really happened, and I'm able to show up 100%, which is something that has taken me a long time to do. I'm able to talk about it from a perspective in which I am able to, yes, definitely like touch on the parts that, um, you know, being positive and staying resilient and knowing that you are able to come back from literally absolutely anything in this life, because we are given the challenges and the obstacles in our lives, in our way, that we need in order to learn the lessons that we needed to learn to become who we came here to become.
Absolutely.
So sometimes when you're sitting in that space of sorrow and sadness and despair, first of all, it is okay to feel all the feels. I have always had a positive outlook into things, but I think a lot of that overly positive attitude was a little bit of toxic positivity as well,
Hmm.
which is something that I did as a coping mechanism for a long time. And hell, it works. Like it definitely works. And it is a way to get really far in life by just focusing on the good rather than the bad.
Hmm.
Also remembering that we need to be tender with ourselves and we need to allow ourselves to feel the feelings, to go through the emotions, to, I call it sitting in our shit. Like, sorry, I curse. I don't know if this is a
It's
curse
fine.
podcast. I like sit in my crap and I'm like sad about it. And I did have to do a lot of that during that time where my life was changing. But in the back of my brain, whether it was just a show for a little while just to keep my mind leveled through such a big traumatic injury, there is always a little bit of truth, which is the knowing that I've always had that there is absolutely nothing in this life that will happen to you that won't lead you to finding something greater about yourself. And it is all in how you choose to view things and how you choose to manage your emotions and allow those emotions to flow through you. And you got to feel it to heal it. Um, but always knowing that you're not a victim of life, right? Life is, and I heard this, and now it's a very common phrase, but I heard it for the first time after my injury, and it just hit me so hard and it made so much sense. And it was, life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
And when you're able to sit in contemplation and you're able to be the spectator of your own life as opposed to allowing yourself to get drowned out by your thoughts in your mind and the desperation and the anxiety that comes with challenges, when you just see things from a neutral point, you're able to more easily connect the dots of why something may be happening and stay calm and stay in faith that all will be okay and that after right before every like giant big level up that you're going to do in life, you are going to be tested. So welcoming in those tests and those challenges and embracing them and embodying them and allowing yourself to sit with the feelings and to sit in your crap and to continue to have that self-love and that resilience and that knowing that all will be okay will really get you there. And
Yeah.
beyond that, and beyond that, and beyond your wildest dreams, I have learned so much since my injury. I mean, I have been like the chemistry of my brain has completely been altered. And the way that I look at life, the way that I look at death, because it
Mm-hmm.
could have been much worse. The way that I relate to people, the way that I wake up every day, the way that I look at my own body now, and how grateful I am for everything that it does for me, even though half of it is dormant right now.
Yeah. I mean, we could just continue on to like 5 more podcasts, I think. There's so much in there. And I think the takeaway is remember to live in your own truth. Just, I think that's a theme kind of throughout from the beginning of this episode to now is you can, sit in your own shit, give yourself that time. Don't always think that you have to wear a smile because you're worried about what others, may think or feel and live in your own truth because that's what you're here to do. You're here to live out your purpose and to learn from the things that happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go into some fun Q&A, lighten it up a little bit.
All right.
Okay. So Yara, what are you currently reading or listening to?
Oh my goodness. I should have practiced.
That's okay.
To be honest with you, Karen, I am in a time in my life right now that is not consumption based. And there has been many times where I have been consuming great content. But as of right now, I am mostly working on listening to my own inner knowing. So I spend a lot of time meditating. I spend a lot of time out in nature. As far as books that have helped me
Mm-hmm.
and have changed my life, these are some classics. If you're looking for more into deprogramming your mind and working through anxiety and that like hustle culture and maybe understanding life a little bit deeper, the way that I have been able to now so that you can live more at peace. The Four Agreements is a top-notch book.
Ooh,
Everyone should read.
I haven't heard that one. I'll put it on my book list.
Oh, it is exquisite. Exquisite. And if you're looking into business and finances and how to unleash your power when it comes to money stories, business building, what you should be. This is a classic. This was written in the 1930s, I believe. And it is a book that you have to read and continue reading. And there are parts of the book that will hit different people differently. And it's just a series of stories that are put together because I think we all learn in a different way. We each of us connect to a different story, but each one of those stories holds the formula to what you should be focusing on in order to unleash abundance, both financial, time, love, all of it. And that is it's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yep. Yeah, that is definitely a classic. That's a great one. Awesome. And you're right. There's going to be times within everybody where you need inspiration and you're looking for consumption and ideas and new things and to learn from other people. And then sometimes we just need space for ourselves to grow. And a lot of times inspiration comes even in the quiet. So absolutely. Okay. If you and I were meeting in 1 year to pop a bottle of champagne, what would we be celebrating?
We would be celebrating, gosh, I do quantum leaps in life now. So 1 year into my future, I see so much. My dream is to create a space in the Florida Keys, purchase a piece of real estate and create a one-stop shop salon spa where people can come and just relax and just
Yes.
spend an entire day, both for tourists, wedding world, and our locals. Also in the online space and how I show up online, would be celebrating like 100 coaching clients under my belt.
Yes. I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, with your new spa, I'll be your first full paying client. How about that?
Yeah.
And most importantly, where can listeners find you? And if you have anything coming up, feel free to share too.
Absolutely. My name is Yara Torre, and you can put that into Instagram, Yara Torre, and you can find everything about me there. I am currently enrolling clients, one-on-one coaching clients, into my coaching container called Tower Divinity, which is a 6-month coaching container, which you'll be able to work with me one-on-one. I have found throughout the years that my superpower is connecting with people of all walks of life, especially entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking for direction and who are looking for peace and ease into their lives. So I incorporate my over 16 years of business experience along with healing modalities like Reiki, astrology, tarot, and mind work, big mind work. And we put them all together in order to help people level up. So you
Love
can
it.
find yaradelatorre.com, read all about that. And I'm always a message away on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes so that everyone can connect with you. Yara, it has been such a pleasure. I am just, again, I'm just so honored to even have you in my life, let alone be able to have you pour into our listeners. So thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure. I love being here, and I love you too, Karen.
Mm.